Toohey, everyone.
So I'm Amanda, and my project was focusing on creating an intervention manual that discusses how to implement water savings design strategies in community food hub environments. And I created the manual using the case study of an IRC aquaponics incubator, going off of what Kiki's incubator is about, and it was called the Camelback Yard. And so first I'm going to give you some background. For those of you who are not familiar with International Rescue Committee, they are a nonprofit organization, and they really pride themselves in responding to the world's worst humanitarian crises, particularly those devastated by conflict and disaster. And recently they've launched a program called the New Works Program, which is specifically focused on providing tools and education for refugee farmers so that they can find a way to support themselves here in their new environment coming from a crisis. And so the first phase of the incubator was actually a project done by a former student. He graduated last year, and so during his phase of the project, he helped create the first component, which is this aquaponics greenhouse. And the aquaponics greenhouse sits on about a 1-acre lot in central Phoenix off of Camelback and 17th Avenue, so it's in a very urban, dense environment. The light rail goes by it, and IRC identified this plot as an area where they could really make a change in terms of the community. And so in the first phase, they completely focused all of their efforts on building this main greenhouse. And from there, we launched into the second phase, which is what they're currently in right now. It's actually still a living project, so they're going on to continue into another phase in the fall with more students. But just to kind of put into context what I've been doing and what I was focusing on, I first want to discuss kind of the sustainability problems IRC and I are trying to address by creating this type of manual. And so first and foremost, Arizona as a state is currently experiencing its 22nd year of long-term drought. It's been deemed one of the worst in centuries, and there's kind of no end in sight for it. So really we have to start figuring out ways to adapt and adapt to these extreme droughts and find new ways to get these resources we need to survive. And so a lot of these problems are exacerbated by climate change, as well as dense populations, very fast urban and economic development and growth, which in turn puts big stress on resources such as food and water. And looking more specifically in the Phoenix area, Phoenix is actually classified as a food desert, which means it's little to no access to fresh produce in a very easy, efficient way. And so taking all of these components and moving forward, we really wanted to figure out how to address them into the second phase of the Camelback Yard site. And so one of the first things IRC wanted to focus on was this concept of water-sensitive design. And water-sensitive design is a descriptive term often used in urban planning and development. It basically describes ways in which you can integrate the water cycle with the urban water cycle. And so this diagram kind of shows you, rainwater harvesting, swales, and all these different things that can reuse the water in an efficient way so that we're not wasting potable water on watering plants or something of that matter. It's a technique that's gaining a lot of popularity, especially in dry, arid climates like here in Phoenix. And it's something that has components that can be done at any budget level. And so the next aspect they wanted to focus on was transforming the incubator greenhouse into more of a community food hub. And community food hubs are a relatively new concept, expanding on the idea of a community garden, in that it's much more inclusive and active. And so these images are actually renderings of how the site is going to transform itself into a community food hub. They were created by the student design team that's also part of the project. And so some of the components they want to add in are kitchen for food prep so they can sell in farmers markets, and shaded areas where people can come and read and hang out, and creating more than just a community garden environment. And so what I came up with was sort of an intervention manual, which is essentially a glorified how-to guidebook. And in order to create this manual, I started off in the project last semester, and with IRC, Nature Conservancy, City of Phoenix Watershed Management Group, those were all the key stakeholders, we hosted a series of design charrettes from August to December. The first being with just us, the key design and development team and the key stakeholders. And then as each design charrette went on, we included more members of the community and the refugee farmers in the New Roots program. And so during these times, we would show them the different design renderings and kind of get their feedback. And so the first thing we started off with was establishing our project criteria and our roles in development. And so this kind of shows you the brainstorming session of the very first design charrette. And as we went on, we shared these documents, excuse me, during the charrettes that included the community members, and they identified 4 key criteria that they would like to see added into the site as it develops on. And the first criteria was designing functional stormwater and rainwater harvesting features, promoting equitable site use, providing on-site food production, and promoting sustainable awareness and education. And so with this manual, I've honed in on those first and last components and tried to find a way to synthesize what we're doing in a way that someone like a refugee farmer could pick up the manual and know what we're talking about. And so the first few charrettes, these were the earlier design renderings of what the site is projected to look like. And from there, we created the final design selection. And so as IRC moves into the third phase of the project, this is what they're going to be basing it off of and developing out into. So they're going to be adding solar components, another greenhouse, raised beds, et cetera, et cetera. I was only focusing on water-sensitive design strategies. And so, unfortunately, my manual is 30-odd pages, and so I didn't want to paste them all up here for you guys, but this just gives you kind of a glimpse into what the manual looks like. It is digital, so that it can be easily shared, and if IRC wishes to do so, they can share it online or with other community gardens. They do have a lot of partnerships, and that's what we were really trying to use this manual for. And so within the manual, I break down basically everything I've just spoken to you guys about. So I discuss what water-sensitive design is, what a community food hub is, how they function, as well as breaking down different laws, regulations, permits, policies that would affect any type of development they're going to be doing on site, including the rainwater harvesting and stormwater management components they'll be adding in. So the outcomes of the project, when I had started, these were my key objectives. So I wanted to identify and frame policy guidelines, identify strategies for scaling and transfer, research feasibility of solutions and best practices, identify the barriers and how they can overcome them, and leave them with some recommendations for the future as they enter into the third phase. And yay, I actually was able to hit all of my outcomes, so that was pretty exciting. And so when looking back at my project takeaways, I wanted to do it in a how-to style as well, just to go along with the manual. And so this experience was really great for me because I learned so much about how community garden settings can attain water self-sufficiency. I learned about ways to strengthen partnerships, how to share visions and develop them, how to enable a community, how to establish sustainable practices, and then how we can actually demonstrate these techniques in a way that people can learn and take them to their own sites. And that's it.